too harshly, I hope. So yeah, Mediterranean oak borer is, let's click through to my next slide here if I can figure this out. First discovered in Napa County in 2019. This beetle is from the Mediterranean. So its native range is northern Africa into northern Europe and as far east as Turkey and Iran. It has something like 14 hosts in its native range. Here in California, it's been attacking valley oaks, white oaks, and blue oaks, and to a very limited extent, we found it in black oaks, or researchers have found it there. And at the moment, the current rate of spread appears exponential. I am not a researching arborist. I'm an estimator for a family-owned tree service in Sonoma County, but I spend something like 50 hours a week driving around, talking with people, looking at trees, and looking at the same population of trees every single day. And it's been pretty intense to watch these changes happening over the last couple of years. So in 2023, we saw the first few trees being affected, and we saw maybe a couple of dozen trees. In 2024, we saw hundreds of dead trees. And then in the spring of 2025, it was thousands, and it was probably tens of thousands of trees in Sonoma County have died from the beetle. At present, we know that there are Mediterranean oak borers found in Sonoma County, Napa County, Lake County, Yolo County. Marin County, it was found just in the last 2 months. There were introductions in the Sacramento area, spread to El Dorado County, Amador County. They found them in Contra Costa County in a disposal site. I'm not clear if they've spread far and wide in Contra Costa County and then in Southern Oregon. So the thought is that there were multiple introductions, very likely on French barrel staves. And so they're thinking it was Citrus Heights, Southern Oregon, in Napa County is where it was first brought in. Here, it is an ambrosia beetle. So, pardon me. This is an illustration here, just to show how fast this has been spreading. So this picture is taken from a park which is 300 yards away from where I'm sitting right now in Sebastopol. So the first slide is from April 30th of 2023. We had no evidence of Mediterranean oak borer. And the second one is August 30th, 2024. That's the most recent Google satellite image that we have. But when I take a picture on the ground, there are about 15 valley oaks that are, in this opening. And at present, 8 of them are dead, many more showing signs of decline. And that's within about a 2-year span. So it's spreading really, really rapidly. They are very small. So that's just a regular, popsicle stick, and they're tiny. They're less than a 1/16 of an inch across. They're an ambrosia beetle. So California has its own native ambrosia beetles. They play a pretty important role in the forest. They go after trees that are drought stressed, fire damaged, have physical damage, are getting too old, and they will essentially kill off the tree and make room for new trees to fill in the gaps. They have an organ underneath their jaws that after they've chewed through the bark and into the sapwood, they inoculate the tree with fungus or with spores from that organ underneath their jaws. And that's what they use to raise their young. The fungus that came from Europe, one of them produces fusarium wilt, which is what's actually killing the trees off. And our native trees do not appear to have good resistance to it. When I am going onto a property and looking at the trees, and I suspect that it's Mediterranean oak borer, often what we'll find is beetle frass at the base of the tree, and I'll take a hatchet and cut a section of the bark off and try to recover a beetle, put it under the microscope, and if we see these little bumps, we can be fairly certain that that's what we're dealing with. But if the tree is browning, it has a patchy crown, it has what we call popcorn foliage, appears to be declining, and then we see beetle frass sort of concentrate in a couple of small spots. That's just the behavior of the beetle, and we're pretty sure that's what's going on. So this is what I'm seeing when I'm driving around Sonoma County. In this case, this is at the corner of Petaluma Hill Road and oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the name of the street. It's not really relevant. But from the road, I saw that tree. It when I first looked at it, it had a bit more green on it. But I left my card on the mailbox. It was behind a locked gate, and they called me back. I went and looked at it. I thought originally it might be a 3-foot diameter tree, and it wasn't. It was a 64-inch diameter tree, which puts it at about 300 years old. Um, and there was considerable amount of dieback in the crown and this beetle frass at the base. By the time we're seeing beetle frass coming out at the bottom of the trunk, there is no recovery for the tree. If we can get to it really early, we may be able to prune off dead branches. The beetle attacks the tree from the top, so they fly. They get into the upper canopy, and the observations I've been making is they tend to go for the tallest and the oldest trees in a particular group, um, and they work their way down the crown. And by the time it's coming out of the bottom, the tree has already got so much fusarium running through the sapwood that they never make it at that point. Um, this is what it looks like when I use a hatchet and trim back the bark, and I'm finding galleries that look like this. So there's, just above that red circle, you can see that black line. That's the margin of the fusarium infection. Um, this was an interesting tree. This was the first tree in a neighborhood in Santa Rosa. I originally came out to look at the tree for pruning on March 25th, and it hadn't leafed out yet for the spring. And when I came back to actually do the work to get the crew set up, the it was clear that it had been infected the year prior because we have dead tips up at the top, and then it leafed out as much as it could in the spring, and those leaves completely browned over. So it happens really quickly. This tree is something like 45 inches in diameter, so it's going to be about 200 years old. If you look at the lower portion of the trunk, you can see that light colored spot. I don't know if you guys will be able to see my cursor. No, not easily. That's where I use the hatchet to trim back and look for the beetles to try to do a positive identification for it. And I'm pulling the beetles out to do a positive ID so that when I apply for a tree removal permit from the city of Santa Rosa, for instance, I can make a compelling case for why their $2,400 in permit fees should be waived. We really need to get these trees down safely and properly disposed of so that the beetles don't fly off and infect other trees. And they've been really good about allowing that to happen if we can make a compelling case that that's what's going on. This is another tree, similar neighborhood. In the summer of 2024, I was asked to come out and provide a quote for pruning this tree, and the client had 2 other trees of similar size. One of them, again, is probably over 200 years old. And I said, look, I know that Mediterranean oak borer is in the neighborhood. The trees don't desperately need to be pruned. I would really recommend that you not invest the money, because pruning trees of this size, you can be talking $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per tree, and removal is significantly more. I said, save your money. She opted to have the tree pruned. They did a wonderful job with the pruning, but within a month, it started to brown over. So yeah, first signs of stress at the end of 2024. Maybe it started to yellow a little bit. It wasn't very clear, but it fully leafed out in the spring of 2025, and within a couple of months, we had major dieback and beetle frass sprouting out of the base of the trunk. This is a slide driving down southbound on the 101 freeway. This is just north of Petaluma, and these trees are in as perfect a spot as they could be. So they're not being stressed by construction. They're not being stressed by drought. The last 3 years have been really mild. Our summers have been really mild. They're just getting hit hard by the Mediterranean oak borer. And we're seeing at least 50% of the trees are dead, and more showing signs of decline. The crowns are starting to yellow. Let me see. So the behavior of the beetle seems to be changing based on the population density. So in 2023, the first few trees that we saw, they had what we call flagging. They were wilting on usually the southwest quadrant of the tree. That's where it's going to be the most drought stressed. It's the hottest part of the tree, and maybe the beetles get to wake up a little earlier from their winter nap and become more active. Um, that has changed in areas where we have a higher beetle population. What we're seeing is a little bit of yellowing one year, the next year they leaf out, and they're fully dead by midsummer. The earliest research by I think it was Curtis Ewing and Mike Jones. They're the two people working for UC Extension. I think they've got Cal Fire emails. They're the ones who are really heading up the research on this, and they've been our point people for when we have questions about this. They suggested in the early research that environmental conditions like adequate water, adequate mulch, lack of soil compaction was as statistically significant of a determiner of whether the tree would make it or not as the application of chemicals they were trying. My impression, driving around the county, is that it doesn't seem to matter what the cultural conditions are. We're seeing really high populations of dead trees in the Laguna area where they have access to plenty of water. There's no construction, there's no soil compaction. The critical thing about the beetle population and the behavior is when you have a whole lot of dead trees close together. Previously, we thought that the beetles wouldn't go after trees smaller than about 11 or 14 inches in diameter. And I found them in trees as small as 4 inches in diameter when all of the other trees are infected. So population density is going to impact how they behave, and they're going to go after smaller and smaller trees. And that's really troublesome, because even if we lose the really big trees, which would be ecologically a disaster and really an expensive problem for California and for homeowners, if if we get a big lump of beetles and we lose a lot of the big trees, then they stop, the population goes down, we could have young trees coming up. If we are losing all of our young trees, we have the potential for losing it as a species, and that's really troubling. So best management practices. The earliest recommended best management practices were solarization. So taking the trees down, keeping them on site, and covering them with clear plastic to cook the beetles and keep them from flying away. And this proved to be really impractical. We attempted it on a number of properties. We found out that you couldn't use painter's plastic because it would degrade in the sun and just fly away in little pieces. We switched to using greenhouse plastic, but over winter, all the little small animals would go underneath the plastic where it was nice and toasty warm, and then the foxes and the bobcats would rip at the plastic to try to get to the animals that were underneath. and it just wasn't practical. Even after we solarized it, we had to make a return trip to dispose of the wood, and it was onerous and expensive, and it just didn't make any sense. It wasn't even appropriate in many places. They just don't have room to take down a 3, 4, 5 foot diameter tree and stage it on site. Burning is probably the most reasonable way to get rid of this material. Um, Air curtain burners are a really interesting technology if utilized appropriately. And there are a couple of major brands that are out there, and I have no, specific recommendation of one over the other. But it's available technology. It's not terribly expensive. It's cheaper than chipping and grinding. It has a much lower fossil fuel footprint. Chipping and grinding is a reasonable way to get rid of the material, but you still have to truck it to the grinder and truck it away afterwards and find something to do with all that material. We are, with my tree service, we are chipping everything. And then we're hauling it to a hot composting facility. So we have a special attachment for a little excavator. We'll break down 5 foot diameter trunks and feed it through a conventional tow behind chipper. And for us, that at the moment is the most effective way to doing it, dealing with it. Burying is also a reasonable way to do it if you have space to do it. So on large rural properties, that's probably the best way. So what I'm asking for, what I'm hoping for, is that we can get disposal sites running air curtain burners, hopefully subsidized by the state, local government. The problematic part of this is that early on, I think it was around 2020, the state looked at the insect and said, well, if it's not going to be affecting the avocado or the almond crop, then it's not going to be economically important to California. And so the Department of Agriculture said they weren't going to fund any research. There is, however, something like 3 million acres of rangelands that may be affected if the blue oaks are if we lose a lot of blue oaks. So that is an economically important part of our agriculture in California. So we need disposal sites. We also need to consider that this isn't the only pathogen that we're going to be facing. And we got caught flat-footed. Invasive shot-hole borer is currently in Southern California. It's made it as far north as San Jose. It hasn't quite reached Sonoma County, but we're worried about it. Gold spot oak borer is going after coast live oak. Emerald ash borer has been absolutely devastating throughout the east, and we haven't gotten it yet in California, but we're worried about it. Laurel wilt has gone after red laurel and white laurel in the southeast, but our California bay laurel is also susceptible. The economic impact of that would be absolutely incredible. There are millions of these trees that are hanging over roads and homes, and they're going to do a lot of damage if they are infected and they start breaking and falling. So that slide, for instance, that was the first tree found on the Santa Rosa JC campus. I found that last year with Mediterranean oak borer. And that campus is really known for its oak trees. It's going to be very different if we are not able to save them. That's the end of my slideshow, and I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Matt, for a very sobering presentation. And for people who are asking in the chat about Q&A only chat, so you only have a chat on your phone. Why don't you type your question in the chat and I'll pick it up from there since you don't have a Q&A function. We also have a raised hand. We are going to go to the questions that were put in the QA, written out in the Q&A. We are prioritizing them. So you can put your question and type it out in the Q&A, or if you keep your hand raised, we'll eventually get around to you. Okay, So, I have a few questions. Can arborists spread the problem? For example, if they trim an infected tree, then go to another city and trim an infected tree, do you have to worry about things getting on your shoes, for example, or your clothing?
It's not a fungus. It's not like sudden oak death that you can spread on your shoes. It's an insect. So
So
if
even though the insect uses fungus to do the damage.
correct, yeah. And there was a question there of, if I'm using my hatchet to check out one tree, or we're pruning a tree and we're trying to do sanitary pruning of taking off dead branches, can the fusarium be transferred from one tree to another? And the answer that we've gotten from Curtis and Mike has been no. That's not a major concern. It's disposal of the material appropriately. Um, and it's becoming a big deal because CalTrans, PG&E, they've been leaving wood by the side of the road, which invites, I call them wood vultures, folks who are looking for firewood, who take it and then they spread it further afield. So we need protocols and places to bring it that are subsidized so that tree services bring it to the right spot. And it's very expensive to do disposal, and so it's expensive for homeowners to do the right thing. And it's not clear what that is now because we don't have disposal sites set up.
Okay, and yeah, and again, sorry to be a hard ass, guys, but preference would be to put your questions in the Q&A unless you do not have that as an option because you're on your phone. Because we're starting to see some questions in the chat, and that's makes it a little more difficult to navigate where all the questions are. Okay, so there's some controversy whether the larvae eggs can survive toasting of oak staves. Can you confirm it may have arrived on untoasted raw French oak? And that's a first.
I only know what I read in the paper and what I'm getting from the experts. And I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just someone who's seeing it on the ground and trying to share my story. Yeah,
Yeah, got it.
yeah.
Um, and a follow-up to that question, does the wine industry know, and is there an effort to require French oak products imported for the wine industry that they be fumigated and regulated by the USDA?
I don't know. I read in the Press Democrat early on, like in 2023, I believe, on the online notes, someone said, "Oh yeah, I worked in a cooperage, and we used to see these beetles flying off." And I know that Curtis and Fred, or excuse me, Curtis and Mike, they believe that those were the points of infection. I decided I was going to try to call up places that sourced barrel staves, and every single one that I called already shut down. So I think I'm not sure where all the barrel material is coming from now, but all the ones in Sonoma County didn't seem to be answering their phone immediately after that article came out.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any advice for land managers on frequency protocols for inspecting oaks on their properties for this disease?
Yeah, the more you see it, the easier it is to spot. The more time you spend with your trees, the easier it's going to be to see changes. Um, so now we're seeing in areas with low population density, you'll see a few dead branches the first year. Um, and if you can prune those off and burn or bury or chip, that's the best recommended practices. Um, but in the springtime, it's been interesting to see if all the trees that we as arborists are looking at that we think maybe it's already infected, if it's going to leaf out or not. Um, so I think annual couple times a year, if you can walk around and be observant of your oak trees, you can try to stay on top of it.
Okay. And are there any prophylactic treatments? Is there anything you could do to your oaks to protect them?
Nothing is proven yet.
Okay.
So there's industry wide, there's been an increased push towards chemical fertilizers and chemical pest controls, and it's the plant healthcare industry. And so more and more and more companies are qual certified, and they're trying to push products that are already out on the market. And I'm not intimately familiar with all of them. It it's unclear how effective they are. Um, those can be applied with injectables to the trunk, or there's topical sprays. According to Curtis Ewing and Mike Jones, they're sort of frowning on the injections currently because they haven't been done at the appropriate season, or not being done very well. And that can cause other problems. They're really hopeful that there's going to be some topical sprays, which will be less invasive, less cost, or more cost effective for homeowners. But nothing is proven yet, and there's no funding. So I think the project they're trying to put together is going to be funded by large corporations like Davy Tree, for instance, and chemical suppliers, to try to put the money together, because they're not getting any help from the state. So it's basically on counties and cities to figure out what they're going to be doing on their own.
Stay tuned, folks. Have any of the insects come north from the tropics due to climate change, and are more tree killers on their way north?
I don't know. I think a lot of things get carried in forest products rather than flying on their own. So, firewood is always the classic one that spreads things far and wide. But, sudden oak death, for instance, 20 years ago, it's thought that it came from Southeast Asia, probably in pallets, made it to Europe, where it got into the rhododendron trade, and then came into California on rhododendrons and azaleas, and then spread far and wide with utility pruning and firewood. So yeah, things have a tendency to move. That's globalization.
And same questioner, could the DNA of the fungus be used to design and produce a fungicide specific to it?
Don't know. I don't know.
Potentially, theoretically.
There's another arborist that I work with, and he said there are some organic sprays that are certified for combating fusarium. That's potentially really exciting, because those can be foliar sprays. So it's not reliant on the timing of. Usually the chemicals are injected into the trunk during the spring. So as the sap is moving up, in the spring, as the tree is leafing out, there's a critical time to do the injections. If we can do foliar sprays, that would be much, much better. I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing that will be funded, because it's harder to patent. Uh, yeah, I don't know how all that works exactly as far as funding.
And you mentioned valley oaks, black oaks, white oaks. What about other?
Valley oaks, blue oaks, and Oregon white oaks.
I'm sorry, blue oaks. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. What about all the other oak species in California?
they do not appear susceptible to this particular pathogen.
Any care speculate why?
They're all related. They're all members of the white oak family. Black oaks, coast live oak, they're in the red oak family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and can you give us any thoughts about hormone bait traps?
No, I don't have a perspective on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Have you seen oaks survive the beetle fungus after pruning? How long does it take for the beetle to kill mature oak?
It depends on the population density. So if it's just going after one branch, like we've had a little bit of success with that. I'd actually have to check back with Kevin, the other arborist on staff here. I know that he's done a lot more of that than I have, as far as trying to preserve the oaks. By the time I'm looking at them, usually there's beetle frass at the base, and there's a 0% chance of survival at that point. But what was the other part of that question? I'm sorry.
Um, have you seen the oak survive after the beetle fungus after pruning? Number one. How long does it take for the beetle to kill a mature oak?
Anywhere from 1 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on population density. So early on, when we had lower population density around this area, we would just see a branch die 1 year, half of the crown the next year, take maybe 3 years. Now in really high population areas, it's all appears to be within 1 year. So the tree was probably infected during the summer of the previous year, and then it'll fully leaf out and then completely die before the end of the summer. Is proving to be more the experience now.
Okay, so moving on. Any concerns for the infected tree roots?
Well, it's unlikely to fail at the base. That is a big concern, and because all of this is dynamic, we're still learning. I haven't actually seen any trees fail from the beetles themselves, and that was what we were worried about. Our native ambrosia beetles, when they burrow in and they form their galleries, they come straight in towards the middle, and their galleries don't branch. The Mediterranean oak borer, they come in and they will fork and fan, and it's at 90 degrees to the grain. And so the fear was that we were going to see weakness and having branches 10, 14 inches diameter start to fail. This is so recent. We haven't seen a lot of these larger trees beginning to fail yet. It's going to happen the longer we go. The longer the trees are dead, the more likely they are to fail, as all dead trees do eventually. When I've seen dead branches and inspected them, or broken branches, I'm finding secondary insects that are getting in there, different kinds of borers. So the base of the tree has Mediterranean oak borer. The upper branches that are failing are coming from flat-headed borers, other kinds of boring insects. So as the population of dead trees goes up, we're going to see differing populations of secondary decomposers coming in, and it's going to change over time. So there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, is mitigation required for tree removals? Is it great? It is great the city and counties waive permit fee.
Is that a question?
I'm not sure. It is mitigation required for tree removals, and
Oftentimes, yeah. So I mean, it depends on the city. The county doesn't have specific mitigations if it's among their exemptions, but that's limited to Sonoma County. As I understand it, this is going out to all of California, so it's going to depend on your local ordinance.
okay. And you talk about the ways of disposing of the
Mhm.
chipped wood. Um, is chipped wood something that you could use just on your property per se, or could you use it, for example, for making biochar?
Yes, yeah. So once the tree is chipped, you've dealt with the vast majority of the beetles, and you've removed their ability to reproduce any further. So it's not a perfect solution, but I don't think we should let good, or what is it, great be the enemy of the good. You're significantly reducing the population, and yes, you can use it on site. Um, and yeah, it's totally reasonable for use as biochar feedstock. Um,
Let's see, just kind of going through the chat. And then I'm going to back to see if I missed any questions that were in the chat. Appreciate those of you who put your questions in the Q&A and not chat. Okay, so our phone call person, Terry Logston, Terry, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much. Terry Logston, I'm the Chief Climate Resiliency Officer and Tribal Liaison for the County of Lake. Um, First and foremost, this is devastating to tribal cultural resources. Um,
Yeah.
Dr. Jones was at a forest health meeting convened by our local RCD I think it was last week, maybe the week before. So in the last 10 days. And if you know Mike Jones, you know how chipper he typically is. But he gave an update on the Mediterranean oak borer and basically said, prepare for all valley oaks to die. And I have seen that happening this summer, particularly since the 1st of July. We have a local organization here that's been working both with Curtis and Mike extensively called the Clear Lake Environmental Research Center. They have a mob Mediterranean oak borer or mob monitoring project on their website, theclerk.org. And a lot of the sightings that are listed on there are just from me. But what I understand is a major way in Lake County that this has spread is from the line clearing, because you have to sterilize your equipment between each branch, not each tree, each branch of the tree. And Dr. Jones also mentioned that there is more than one fungus. There, at least has known of 4 or 5. So it's not just Fusarium wilt. And sadly, what he said that was really depressing was that there's not only is there not much research going on, because as you mentioned earlier, USDA is not necessarily funding it yet because it's not typically agriculture. It's hard to make that,
Well,
you know,
the state isn't funding it,
correct.
not national government. Yeah, the state isn't, and I wouldn't expect anything from the national government right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he said, not only is there not any funding, and there's not any funded research going on, particularly at the federal level, there's no researchers left to do this work. And so he's very despondent about the outlook here in Lake County. And I had the opportunity in the last 48 hours to drive around the lake and drive to Sacramento through the Cache Creek Canyon. And it's just, I try not to be depressed about it, but how are we going to get a handle on this? I'm looking for a glimmer of hope. Thanks.
Honestly, I'm looking at it as, can we figure out a way to save specific trees? It's not reasonable to think that we're going to be able to do any kind of treatments over millions of acres. But if we can find ways to save specific trees, that's a small glimmer of hope. We can keep the population density low enough that we can preserve some of the younger trees. We don't lose the whole species. Um, and yeah, I mean, these valley oaks, many of them are 300 years old. It's not woodlands, it's orchards. They're improved genetics. They're golden delicious, not crab apples. I've eaten acorns too, and the biggest, oldest ones in Katati, for instance, they're sweeter. The shells separate better. They don't have the skin on them. I mean, it's this amazing resource that is entirely underappreciated by most people, and it's I'm in agreement with you, but I don't have a lot of positive stuff to say about it. I'm afraid.
One of the things that I'm doing right now is working with the tribal. I'm going to start working with the tribal governments. So far, I've heard back from one about because they can go direct to the federal government to declare a local emergency, and that may, although the funding landscape has changed a lot, hopefully that will at least get some funding to store and collect acorns and start nurseries. But how to protect those nurseries I hadn't heard the 4-inch trees. So yeah, thanks and keep doing the good work.
So one of the big issues with setting up air curtain burners, for instance, is air quality control. You know, at least where I'm located, and I'm really wondering if the tribes have the ability to work around that. If they're sovereign, do they still have to? Can we set up on their sites? You know, would they be willing to run disposal yards in various places?
That's a great question. It depends on their their contract with the BIA. We had a really great demonstration project here in Lake County, again with Clerk and Earth Foundries, who
Mhm.
has an air curtain burner
And
to get.
PG&E, they helped out on that one.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And we had an air curtain burner and the from Cal Fire,
Mhm.
and then Earth Foundries had a Tiger Cat carbonizer, so they were able to produce biochar. That was for a certain project, but our air quality management district found a way to allow it, and so you can reach out to your AQMD to reach out to ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Okay, we've got a few more coming in. One question I asked, what is the relative population of these targeted oak species as compared with other oaks? Is this the most common type, for example, or lesser?
Um, well, I was looking this up for the slideshow. There's supposedly 274,000 acres of valley oak in California. There used to be quite a few more. Um, you know, the Central Valley was all along the riparian corridors were large stands of large valley oak in most of the valleys in Northern California had valley oak, but it is prime agricultural land. So a lot of it's been cleared. Coast live oak is probably the most common that we have. I don't know if that answers the question very well, but they're ecologically very important, culturally very important um, where they're found.
Okay, and back to the biochar issue. Uh, you already indicated that, yeah, you thought, the wood from the trees could be used potentially for biochar. Um, do you know of any efforts to actually do this?
You can use almost anything for biochar, so there's nothing unique about valley oak. Biochar is you're thermally decomposing the wood, and you're definitely killing the beetle. If someone has the technology and it's scalable and it's appropriate, that's a great thing to be doing with this material. Um,
So,
like I said, I don't think we need to let great be the enemy of the good. We need to dispose of the material. So if we can get char, great. If it's cleanly burned down to CO2 and ash, then that's also good.
okay, and so you don't think it would impact the quality or composition of the
Oh,
biochar?
not at all. Not at all. I've done some work with biochar and this Sonoma Biochar Initiative, and sourced and processed the feedstock for the 2012 biochar project here in Sonoma. So I know a little bit about it. Yeah, it's perfectly good for that.
Okay, and the name of the beetle again is the Mediterranean oak borer.
Correct. Yeah. Am I still screen sharing here? Yes, invasive Mediterranean oak borer.
And you did mention a bunch of other borers. Um, are,
Right.
did they likewise come from other parts of the planet?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What is their life cycle? Eggs, where, when, larvae, where, when, pupae, adults, mating, predators?
Yes.
All of the above. Yes.
All of the above. It all happens inside the trunk. Yeah, it happens in wood, generally larger than that, and it's just most.
Okay.
And they get I think it's 2 or 3 life cycles or breeding cycles in per year, depending on temperature.
Is compost made from fungus killed trees a danger to any plants fertilized with it?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, it has not been a problem as of yet.
Okay. And any role of prescribed fire in terms of prophylaxis?
I mean, prescribed fire is usually good. Yeah, it's a great way to dispose of trees that are already infected. I mean, in our native ambrosia beetles, yeah, they're gonna finish off trees that are already stressed, completely kill them and make them ready to burn, so that the ground is clear for younger oaks to come up and fill in the space. I mean, that is the role of many of the beetles, even bark beetles that are so devastating in our current stands in the Sierra. They are part of a natural cycle with, you know, mosaic patterns of age classes. Yeah, that's they're supposed to play their role, and they relate directly with fire. But I don't think that prescribed burning on its own is going to do anything about these beetles, since they infect the upper crown. And by the time they're getting down to the bottom of the tree, they've already had they've already killed the tree and probably already hatched many more.
And do you think there's any part of the life cycle in the acorns?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So another biochar related question. We have a biochar obsessed audience tonight. So is it correct to think of biochar as making it? Is it correct to think of biochar as making charcoal? Then instead of using it for grilling food, to bury it as a soil amendment?
Yes. Um, the biochar is the fixed carbon in the wood. So green wood, live trees are 50% moisture and 50% solid biomass. About 50% of that solid biomass is carbon. About half of that is volatile carbon, and half of that is is um, stable carbon. So the carbon to carbon bonds, that is what the charcoal is the stable carbon to carbon bonds. So about half of the energy in the wood is saved as charcoal, and the other half is available as process heat, or it goes up in the flame. And yes, if you're applying it, if it's clean, if it doesn't have tars in it, if it's coming from untreated wood, so agricultural waste, forestry waste, tree service waste, it can be used as biochar if it's used in the soil.
Okay, great. And got any more coming in? Let me look through the chat real quick one more time in case I missed some there. If there aren't any other questions, I have one myself. Give me a sec here just to make sure I didn't miss any of our audiences. Matt, can we contact you directly by email?
Yes, please. Yeah. And you can call the number on the screen there. That's my Sanborn cell phone.
Okay. Do you want to, if it's okay to contact you by email, are you okay putting it in the chat?
Yeah. It's Matt at sandborntree.com, SANDBORNTREE.com. Matt with 2 T's.
Okay, thank you. And these Mediterranean oak borers, can they be trapped?
Trapped. They can. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Mike and Curtis they've done tests to see what height they fly, and that's by putting sticky traps at various points in the canopy. I think they found them going up to about 60 feet, something like that.
Okay. One more biochar question just came in. Do you have mobile biochar units on site?
No. I mean, I don't personally. There's the Tiger Cat technology, which at the moment is the most it's the most developed technology. So it's the best available technology. It's an air curtain burner that takes out char from the bottom. Air curtain burners, they have a small unit, which is called the Char Boss. It's pretty small. It would be nice if they applied that technology to their larger units, and then that could be really cool. But other than that, scalable, deployable biochar technology at a reasonable scale is not portable. Yeah.
Okay, great. Great. And thank you all for your great questions. And I hope I got to them all and didn't miss any. And so here's my question. Oh, wait a minute. One more new. Wait a minute.
Oh, I should say that conservation burns
We
and
have
pit
again
burns
somebody.
and
So
really low tech biochar is doable in the forest, but that's not, you know, mechanical technology. That's different kinds of burn piles, and that's easily searched on Google. Conservation burns. I'm sorry,
and
Jennifer.
we have somebody asking if you can put your email in the chat. So if you want to spell that out to me, Matt.
Matt, M-A-T-T at sandborntree.com, SANDBORNTREE.com.
Sanborn, sand without a D?
With a D, sand, born at the beach, Sandborn. That's the tree service I'm working
Born as in like born yesterday?
on. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Got it. Oh, there, Janine got it in for me. And is there any treatment to control? And I think you indicated
Not
not
currently.
currently. Yeah.
And we're hoping for more money for research, so we can hopefully find something.
Okay. Yeah.
We meaning arborists,
Sure.
and tree lovers. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Okay. And in our last couple minutes remaining, we just came back from a 2-week vacation, only to find an enormous oak in our backyard. The trunk probably had a diameter of easily 3 to 4 feet. It was this is a big sucker, and it's been beautiful for many, many years. I had been noticing in the past few years that the canopy was looking a little scantier. It had been very full of foliage. It was but now it just was getting scanty, and it had been on my mind to get an arborist in to take a look at it and tell me, you know, what they thought the problem was, if there was anything to be done, or if I needed to take it down. And nature took care of it, because the tree took itself down and took 2 other oaks down. They're live oaks. They're inland live oaks. They're not, you know, they're not valleys or whites or blue oaks. And so, and of course, when you're talking about it and showing pictures of the lack of canopy, you know, good canopy foliage in these trees that you've been seeing, it's like, that looks like my tree has been looking for a while.
Yeah.
But you're saying that's not likely to be this oak borer,
No,
Mediterranean oak
definitely not.
borer.
Definitely not. There,
And when it came down, what actually became real obvious was a tremendous amount of rot at the base.
so in the absence of, you know, insect attack, usually if you're seeing dieback in the crown, it's related to the roots. So armillaria, Ganoderma. I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, wood decaying fungus and root decaying fungus that can go after trees.
Okay.
Yeah, and it really depends. I mean, is there construction damage? Is there soil compaction? Is there, you know, salt from your water softener? et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
I doubt any of those, but I'll have to get somebody out because because this one came down and of course we'll have to get it out of there. But now I'm worried about all the other oaks around it. In terms of, they all look fine, but if something bad happened to this one, could have happened to the others. So
If it was a 3 or 4 foot diameter coast live oak or interior live oak, it's very likely it was close to the end of its natural lifespan. It's not shocking that it had decay in the center.
old age is a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Old age is a possibility. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. And we are at the hour. Matt, this has been fascinating discussion and a very interested audience as exemplified by the number of questions you got and the interest that was shown. So we really do appreciate your taking the time out to come and talk to us about this issue. And I think we all feel a little smarter than we did an hour ago.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Karen, did you want to say anything?
I guess not. I mean, we have a number of people who might be speaking to us in September, but nothing is nailed down. So look for an email. Probably will be the 3rd or possibly the 4th Monday at 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah.
One final question just scooted in. Just in case that person is still on the line. What limits the beetles in their native environment? Do you know?
As far as I know, nothing. They have a very wide range. The trees co-evolved with them, and so they have resistance to the things that our trees don't have resistance to the fungus.
They're
So
they're
part of the natural cycle of things there.
So they're adapted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's northern Africa, I imagine getting into the Sahara. It's northern Europe, I imagine getting into too far of ice, or too far north, the ocean, and then extends out to Turkey and Iran. But I'm pulling that off of Wikipedia.
Because Wikipedia is usually reliable. So
Yeah.
if Wiki says it, I believe it.
If Mike Jones and Curtis Ewing is that's telling me, I can believe it.
Okay, well, thank you again.
All right.
Thanks so much. Great meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.